Let's say you've reached the end of some training and you've been asked to assess some students now. Now, the way you do this might range across a number of different methods. Let's say they've done an online course with you. The chances are the assessment will be undertaken through a predetermined online assessment process, in which case your role as the assessor is simply to identify when it's complete and then go about conducting the assessment. If you've just done a short course and the assessment happens at the end of that day, then it might be a case of observing your students and maybe undertaking some sort of knowledge test as well. Or it could be a longer term course where assessment is happening throughout the course in various methods. Maybe it's a blended approach where some online assessment is submitted and some practical assessment is submitted, and potentially you're still observing them in the workplace as well. At this stage, it's just about identifying who your assessment candidates are. We use the word candidates when we're referring to learners who are now being assessed. The reason we do this is because sometimes students are RPL or RCC. RPL stands for recognition of prior learning. RCC is recognition of current competency. So no additional formal learning has happened maybe through your organisation, and therefore they are just turning up to be assessed. So once you're familiar with how the assessment is going to be undertaken, it is incumbent upon you as a qualified assessor to ensure they're being assessed against the correct benchmarks. If your organisation has already prepared the assessment for you, then the validation process should uncover any validity issues and therefore ensure that the assessment you're using is meeting the principles of assessment and rules of evidence, which we're going to cover later. But it doesn't stop you applying your professional judgment to ensure that the benchmarks are current, they're up to date with industry practices, and so on. So remember, the benchmarks aren't just units of competency. They do include industry benchmarks, workplace benchmarks, and federal or other national benchmarks such as legislation. And so there may have been a change since the last time an assessment was carried out. So this is why you go back and double check before an assessment's carried out. And if you have any questions or doubts, you need to know who you can communicate with within your organisation or the RTO who's underwriting this particular assessment. Once you're happy with this, then we can go to the planning of the assessment.